We've been talking this morning, of course, about the government strategy to tackle violence against women and girls, a long-awaited strategy. And joining us this morning is the Safeguarding Minister, Jess Phillips. Now, I know you've got more to announce later, but there is a bit that we've got this morning as well. And before we start talking about the solution, I just wanted to talk about the scale of the problem first. You know, how big an issue is misogyny?
I mean, look, violence against women and girls in our country, there's many different harrowing statistics that you could pull from. 1 in 8 women last year, 1 in 8. We can all imagine being in a room with eight women, can't we, very frequently. Well, one of those women in the last year will have suffered some form of violence. And violence against women and girls, men's violence, doesn't happen in a vacuum. It starts somewhere and it builds up. You don't start with murder. It goes on a continuum, and so it is a huge and growing issue.
I'm interested when you say it's a huge and growing issue, because it does feel that, like, you know, if you look at your kind of father's generation, your grandfather's generation, and your husband's generation, it felt like there was a kind of progression.
Progress, yeah.
If that makes sense.
Step towards progress, yeah.
And it feels that actually, with the younger generation, perhaps because of the influence of what's happening online, is going the other way.
Look, the data suggests that absolutely. So if I look across every crime type in violence against women and girls, the age of perpetration is falling and victimisation. So both younger people are 40% of young people are controlling behaviours within their own relationships. So maybe we talk about it more. I think that there is an element of not, you know, let's not be so scared of and many young people that they have massively progressed in lots of areas. I don't wish to say they're a doomed generation or anything. As the mother of this generation as well, exactly. Not all of them, but you know, I'm responsible for 2 men in this generation. I don't want to say that they're doomed, but look, the data it is worrying.
And you talked there about the kind of different scales of misogyny, like people don't go straight to murder. What kind of misogynistic behaviour are we actually seeing? You know,
so look, the government and what it is announcing around what we will try and do to intervene has come almost directly from teachers and young people themselves. So if you go and speak to any school in the country, the young girls will tell you the kind of behaviours that they're having to tolerate at school. And you might remember the sort of bra strap flicking and things. It's more than that. It is ideas about what women, how they should behave. It is the sharing of naked images. It is misogynistic attitudes towards teachers. And what teachers have told us is that they need the resources and schemes to refer children into to try and stop that behaviour from happening in the first place. And so that's what the government will do.
And this is what you're doing. You've got like kind of misogyny lessons, I guess, for boys at school. Is that
well, look, for all children in school, we will provide healthy relationship education for all children, and that is part of the curriculum that has been updated. That's boys and girls talking about what good looks like, what consent looks like. But what we need to do is make sure that where there are difficult behaviours being shown, that there are targeted interventions, as there would be if my children were showing extremist behaviours in school. There are schemes that people can be sent on, but that doesn't exist for this. So if a young man was had been found to have been sharing images, indecent images, as a mother of sons, what I would want is for the school to have a referral place, a specialist service that they could bring in for a child to stop that progressing.
And just lay out, so that's what you're bringing in today, this kind of specialist service, and then also these kind of ideas that boys are going to be taught about misogyny as well.
Yeah.
Can I just, you know, with my kind of sceptical journalist hat on...
You could be sceptical.
If you're a 13-year-old boy...
Yeah.
And you like Andrew Tate, you know, you admire him, you get Tommy Robinson videos in all of your social media feeds. You know, the last people you're going to listen to is schools and teachers. I mean, if you want to get real on this stuff...
No,
don't you need to ban social media for under 16s?
I mean, the first thing I'd say is that what the government is announcing today will be evidence-based. We will...
seems that what I'm trying to say...
And it will be done by specialists. I absolutely agree with you. All the evidence suggests that actually, while teachers play a massive and important role, that actually with that external partners delivering this stuff is really vitally important, whether that's youth workers, whether that's specialists in violence against women and girls. So I don't disagree with you, and that is actually what we are announcing. But you're absolutely right that the issue of like what our children see online, and I have to say, I think that there are some reasons to be cheerful. In July, the age verification of pornography was brought in, and Pornhub has seen a 77% reduction in its traffic. That's a good thing.
It seems that this government talks a good game on violence against women and girls, but you're a little bit nervous when it comes to some of these really, really big levers, like what we've seen in Australia, banning social media for under 16s, for example. Like, even banning phones in schools, you're not doing that.
I mean, it's the first time anyone's ever described me as nervous, so I shall take that. Look,
the government as a whole, I think a lot of people describe it as nervous.
Look,
for a lot of different
we
things.
will look at what is happening in Australia and absolutely take whatever from the world where the best practice is. It is very, very new what is happening in Australia. And what I would say is that later in the statement, you will see that the violence against women and girls strategy is absolutely not nervous in trying to tackle the online issue, because women, girls, boys, everybody lives their lives half online, and not tackling that would not work.
Can we talk about grooming gangs? Because like, what happened to those girls, for many people, for most people probably, is like the worst possible example of misogyny. From the perpetrators, but also the organisations that they were supposed to turn to, and end up being blamed themselves in some of these cases. So no wonder they don't trust authority. But then you appoint like a Labour peer to head up the inquiry. I mean, you can see why some victims feel that this government dragged its feet having an inquiry in the first place, and now they've appointed one of their mates to head it up.
Anne Longfield has dedicated her life to supporting and advocating for children and holding to account, more importantly, institutions that failed to do that. And for that, she was, by David Cameron, not a famous member of the Labour Party, David Cameron, appointed to be the Children's Commissioner for the United Kingdom. She has worked under any government of any stripe, councils of different stripes to improve their children's services. And I have to say, I have every faith that without fear or favour, she will absolutely hold people to account, and not just her, the other people on the panel. So that Zoe Billingham has a long career of holding the police to account, and Eleanor Kelly has a long career of making sure that local authorities are held to account.
It is difficult for these women, though, these victims, because they feel let down again and again and again, and they feel that you were reluctant to do it in the first place. Fiona Goddard, for example, a survivor of abuse, someone you know, obviously, she's calling on you to resign. She said that you called her a liar because she said her claims the government was trying to water down the inquiry were categorically untrue.
I'd just like to say, I never once called Fiona Goddard a liar. Look, I have to listen to the voices of victims, and just I think it is really quite important to say that Anne Longfield has been meeting with the victims of grooming gangs over the last week since her appointment, and we have to make sure that we don't say that all victims have the same views. And actually, I've spoken to victims who had met with her who were incredibly pleased with her appointment and felt very confident in both her and the other panel members. So I think that we must make sure that those voices are also heard on the record. And what I would say is I have to listen to a huge range of people, and any criticism that comes my way, I take that absolutely on board. And what we will do is we will roll out a laser-focused grooming gang inquiry that will also, alongside it, Operation Beacon Port, which is the policing element of this, handing over criminals to criminal charges, and those two systems will work together. Look, the proof of the pudding will always be in the eating, and I think we have the best people to do that.
There's just one other thing I wanted to ask you about. This is the difficulty whenever you kind of sit in this chair, that there are so many issues on violence against women that I want to talk about. And you know, we've been talking about misogyny, and at its very worst, misogyny leads to rape, right?
Or murder.
Or murder, yeah, and sometimes both. In my kind of 20 years as a journalist, one of the things that I am most appalled by is, you know, the trauma that rape victims have to go through getting justice.
Absolutely.
And I just want to ask, because we've got these jury reforms going through at the minute, right? You're saying that you have to scrap jury trials for some cases because of the backlog. Should you have considered scrapping jury trials for rape? Because there are some people who say that because of misogyny in society and the trauma of the victims, there is a case that actually that's the one crime that maybe you should not have in front of a jury.
Well, look, I think that first thing I'd say is that the reforms that we're trying to make to our Crown Court backlog is because that we are cruising towards a backlog of just 1,000 cases sitting in the backlog. That the people who that is the absolute worst for is rape victims who, you know, I've met children who were raped and they didn't see the inside of a courtroom until they were then adults, coming forward at the age of 13 and don't see in the inside of a courtroom until they're 21. That is why we have got to have a large-scale focus on how we bring that down. And the strategy...
This is genuinely what I don't understand. Why isn't rape being part of the conversation? For the reasons that you mentioned, but also because there is... Some people have been arguing that it should be for a long time.
Look, there are various different models that have been floated. Look, I actually am sort of... I don't have a very firm personal opinion and what the government will do with regard to how victims are dealt with at rape trials, and bear in mind that we have a Prime Minister who is somewhat of an expert in this and has sought to change things along the way. And the Violence Against Women and Girls strategy that will be released today has quite a lot of things about how we improve the court system and things like the myths and stereotypes which lead to juries being not so favoured in cases of rape trials. But there is no reform that we won't look at to try and improve things for victims of rape. But at the moment, I have to say, there is not the clamour for there to be not jury trials for rape. That is not something I am hearing from the sector. It is not. It is that we need to improve the system and speed up the system that we have.
OK, thanks very much indeed. Jess Phillips speaking to